Welcome all to the 5th of December. Welcome all to the 5th of December 2022 Council meeting. I open the meeting at 7 p.m. I will now pass you on to the CEO, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi all, welcome. My name's Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer. Tonight's meeting is being held in person in accordance with the provision of Council's governance rules and the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting is also being live streamed tonight via Council's website and our Facebook page. The live stream is not interactive. Any comments or private messages directed to us while the stream is live will not be presented to the Council group or have any bearing on tonight's meeting. Council's request to speak methods continue to allow participation of residents without having to attend the meeting in person. Rules for public participation during the meeting. Please note that any public questions submitted to tonight's Council meeting will be read out by a member of our executive leadership team, being tonight Mark Gilio, the Director of Corporate Services, and a verbal response will be provided by the relevant director. These answers and questions will also be included in the meeting minutes following the meeting. Council does not accept questions as part of the request to speak process, and no statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit applies to all requests to speaks tonight, and a timer will be used, and a warning will sound at the 1.5 minute mark. And we ask you to sum up at that point. And if indeed a statement is being read out on behalf of a resident, then the officers will sum up as well for the last 30 seconds. Members of the gallery leaving the meeting tonight, you might be here for a certain item. So if you do plan to leave the meeting at any stage, we just do ask you to not hang out and have a chat in the foyer. It does actually affect our live stream. So I thank you in advance for that. I'll now introduce you to those in attendance tonight, and I'll start with the councillors, and I'll start to my left. I have the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Alida McKern, Councillor Tom Melican, Councillor Peter Di Morellos, and Councillor Alison Champion. And the councillors to my right, I have the Mayor, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Fiona Mitsonikos, Councillor Rick Gorotti, Councillor Elizabeth Neely and Councillor Mark Di Pasquale. This evening we are also joined tonight by the executive team, Mark Gilio, Director of Corporate Services, Natasha Swan, Director of City Development, Darren Bennett, Director of City Services and Assets, and Kath Brackett, Director of Community Wellbeing. Also here tonight supporting the Council and the meeting is members of our governance team, our IT team and our JETS team coordinating the live stream. Thank you. We thank you for your participation tonight and we look forward to the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Banyule City Council is proud to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as traditional custodians of the land, and we pay respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, elders, past, present and emerging, who have resided in the area and have been an integral part of this region's history. Council is committed to and values diversity within our community. I will now read out Banyule's diversity statement that demonstrates our commitment. Our community is made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. We are committed to access, equity, participation and rights for everyone, principles which empower, foster harmony and increase the well-being of an inclusive community. Next, we move to apologies. Are there any apologies? No, I note there are no apologies. Confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 14th of November 2022. Can I please have a councillor to move and second? Councillor Melican moved. Seconded Councillor Mitsonikos. I now put the motion to all those in favour. And all those against? I declare the motion carried. As required at any other meeting of council, councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved. At any point throughout the meeting, if any other councillor recognises that they have a general or material interest, they can flag that at that point and follow the same procedure. Are there any disclosures of interest?
Yes, Mayor. I have a conflict of interest of a material matter and will excuse myself from confidential matters 12.1 Ivanhoe Grammar School, public access options.
Thank you, councillor. Officers that are present, I now ask whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented before council tonight. No conflicts. I now proceed on to item 2.1 petitions. Objection to the draft residential parking permit policy 2022. I note at the same time of collating the agenda there were 44 signatures received, all from Ivanhoe. Since then we have received an additional 32 signatures, of which 24 are from Ivanhoe, 1 from Greensborough, 6 from Eaglemont and 1 from Rosanna. And there are 2 speakers on this item this evening. Roger Fife will address council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Roger, would you please approach the lectern? You have 2 minutes to speak.
Mayor, councillors, this petition opposes the forced amalgamation of Ivanhoe precincts 59, 60 and 61 into one large precinct 60. It also reflects community opposition to the proposal, and I now have 104 signatures in total. I will also draw attention to a failure to communicate the consequences of amalgamation, and which will be an increase in parking permit zones, imposing a burden on residents. Council's 2nd of September letter to certain residents of Ivanhoe said this would allow more opportunities for resident and visitor parking, yet not one new space will be created. Only in October, in an information session, was it admitted that the amalgamation would allow more opportunity for resident and visitor permits. I have walked these streets talking to residents. They were surprised to learn having to obtain parking permits was the intended outcome of the amalgamation. The current 2016 policy resulted in 73 precincts being created, yet only 3 in Ivanhoe are now proposed to become 1. In adopting that 2016 policy, councillors set strict conditions for any future review. Were you consulted this time? 1, that any review should be treated as a fresh policy. 2, councillors be consulted in the preparation of the policy. 3, reference to provision for a review deleted in the current draft policy. In conclusion, parking pressure does not warrant amalgamation. The consequences of that amalgamation have not been communicated effectively to the Ivanhoe community. The enlarged precinct and its justification fails on all points and must be abandoned.
Thank you, Mr. Fife. Are there any questions for the speaker? No.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fife, for your presentation. I would like to clarify exactly what it is you're seeking through making your statement. Are you seeking that zones 59, 60 and 61 remain unchanged per the existing policy? Are you seeking extended consultation? Could you clarify that position, please?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, our objective is to say leave 59, 60 and 61 with their present boundaries. The second is,
Continue, please.
The second
Mr.
question
Fyfe.
is, am I satisfied with the form of consultation, a letter which made no admission of any parking permit imposition on areas that would be amalgamated? The second aspect of my concern and of others is that when there was a very poorly attended consultation at Ivanhoe in October and at Greensborough in late October, it was only then that it became evident in the leaflet that was handed out, information sheet, that in fact the purpose of creating the enlarged zone was to allow opportunity for resident and visitor permits. To say that some zones are underused for parking, well, yeah, let's pile into them and punish them. I could say,
Thank you.
what about go get cars? I will now, so what I'm saying is yes, further consultation is required, and I will hand my copy of the signed petitions, which now add up to 104 Banyule residents.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fyfe. Thank you for that clarification. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pose the questions to the appropriate officer regarding the consultation that was undertaken for the draft residential parking policy and the feedback that was received from that consultation, and particularly with respect to the retention of zones 59, 60 and 61.
Could the officer speak to that?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. We've received quite a lot of consultation, but as yet we haven't gone through the process of analysing that, summarising it and understanding the full extent and nature of it. So we have received a number of submissions in relation to those 3 specific zones and the changes, and as part of our analysis we'll look at what that feedback says and what recommendations we might make to Council when the policy comes up for your consideration.
And through you, Mayor, does the Director believe that the consultation received sufficient response from the community in order to make a balanced and fair recommendation back to Council?
Over to you, officer.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Again, haven't analysed all the details of the submissions that have been received as yet. So consultation finished just a short while ago and we're in the process of working through all of that information. Certainly we were encouraged by the number of submissions that we've received in writing, albeit the low attendance at some of the in-person meetings. We've received numerous calls and spoken with our community about it. So we feel that we can form a view at least to understand the issues that have been raised.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now over to the second speaker. Mr Kevin Hill will address the council in person and speaking for the recommendation. Kevin, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'll come straight to the point. The people that I know and speak to and represent, particularly those in Ailsa Grove and Low Street, don't want any changes to the current parking arrangements or the restrictions. So that's what we want, and if it is deemed necessary by the council to raise revenue by putting parking zones in and charging for permits, then we seek a carve-out for Low Street and Ailsa Grove. And why do we do that? Because in 2011, 2015, sophisticated, cogent arguments were put to this council. It was debated in full, and everybody agreed that there were particular circumstances that warranted the arrangements that are in place now. Nothing has changed since then. In fact, the issues that caused the council to make its decisions in those days have been exacerbated. So I'm absolutely confused as to why this council is being led to think that it needs to change. And it's interesting that the change is only coming about because the current policy has come to an end. Now, if there were pressures that required the changes that are mooted, I cannot believe that it's coincidental that you have to wait to the end of a period before you introduce change. You don't have to do that. So I'm saying this is a bit of a false flag on the part of council. I've invited Councillor McKern to attend Ivanhoe Primary School with me next week to actually see what goes on there, why it's dangerous, why it's economically not feasible to do these things, and how it's going to cause massive, massive problems for the local residents, particularly in Low Street, where I live, and in Ailsa Grove. Now, if anyone wants to dispute the evidence, I have 15 years of photographs and videos that you can all have a look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Hill. Any questions for the Speaker? No? Well, councillors, I believe there is a councillor motion which is different to the officer recommendation on the agenda papers. Would the councillor like to read that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to note the recommendation made by the officers that point 1 receives and notes the petition, and an alternative to point 2 being to refer the petition to the Transport Planning Team for consideration as part of the consultation process. And the addition of point 3 to ensure that a response is provided to the primary petitioner. 4, advise the primary petitioner of this resolution. And 5, note that there have been additional 32 signatories received since the printing of the agenda. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Melican. Would you like, Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to the item?
I'd like to thank the speakers for presenting a very clear case, particularly with regards to clarifying their position on the petition, and also to acknowledge how passionately residents do feel with regards to zones 59, 60 and 61. So your comments are certainly acknowledged by the council. As the Director said, responses are currently being reviewed by our officers, and based on not only the feedback received but also the petition that has been lodged, a recommendation will come back to Council. So I want to assure you that we are hearing you, we take your comments very seriously and your concerns, and that we look forward to getting back to you with a response in due course. Thank you very much.
And would the seconder like to speak?
Just briefly, yes, I did attend the consultation in Ivanhoe. I wasn't able to attend the one in Greensborough, but I certainly heard the concerns of the residents and took them on board and look forward to a good result. Yeah, people are very passionate about this issue, and rightly so. And there are definitely issues around the primary school, and it certainly expanded over the years, and I know the availability for parking for staff at the school has diminished greatly, which has put more pressure on the area. So the pressure is building in this area, and we need to get this decision right, and I'm sure we'll get a good outcome. And I'd also like to thank the speakers tonight for their input and their passion and their desire to make their area where they live even better. So thank you.
And would any other councillors like to speak? I now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 3.1, the Uluru Statement from the Heart. There are two speakers on this item this evening. Sue Harris from Reconciliation Banyule will address Council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Sue, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Mayor and Councillors, the Uluru Statement from the Heart is a monumental piece of work. It's the First Nations description of the state of the nation and a way forward which addresses the failures of the past and designs a more just way for all Australians to walk together. And it's already happening. Victoria has seen the progress towards voice, treaty and truth, through the First Nations Assembly, the Yurok Justice Commission and the work of the Victorian Parliament. Good process is happening, listening, informing, engaging through statewide practical processes which have been comprehensive, inclusive and respectful. The federal government plans a referendum later next year to enshrine the First Nations voice to Parliament, addressing their exclusion from Australia's Constitution. Reconciliation Banyule commends Banyule Council for its current commitment to reconciliation, for its Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan, for its capacity to learn and change and its courage to take practical action. Early years of reluctance or indifference about the Uluru Statement have shifted, including significant change within Council, substantial practical support for Barbun and Beek, for building relationships and better communications through the Advisory Committee. I urge you to take this opportunity now to show leadership for Banyule, to adopt the Uluru Statement from the heart in full, taking practical action for a better future with a reconciling Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. And Uncle... And Uncle Charles Pakana from Barbun and Beek Gathering Place will address Council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Uncle Charles, please approach the lectern. Thank you. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Mayor, councillors, in 2015, in a spirit of bipartisanship, the Prime Minister of this country and the Leader of the Opposition appointed the Reconciliation Council. Its job was simple. It was to advise on progress and next steps forward to a successful referendum that recognised Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country's constitution. In 2017, in direct response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that same referendum council reported, and I quote, "The consensus view of the referendum council is that these recommendations for constitutional and extra-constitutional recognition are modest, reasonable, unifying and capable of attracting the necessary support of the Australian people." Despite that clear statement, the Prime Minister of the time, Malcolm Turnbull, the Federal Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and the Federal Attorney General blatantly misrepresented calls for a First Nations voice in a joint media release that stated, "The government does not believe such an addition to our national representative institutions is either desirable or capable of winning acceptance in a referendum." Tonight, you are being asked to lend your moral support to the truth of modest, reasonable and unifying calls made by our people, our representatives who gathered at Uluru in May 2017. And I therefore place before each and every one of you a challenge, individually and collectively, to vote yes on this matter and have your voice lend its support to a community where, in the words of the Uluru Statement, you walk with us in a movement of Australian people for a better future. Mr. Councillor, councillors, thank you.
Thank you. Now, councillors, there is an officer recommendation on the agenda papers.
Just prior to moving that, Mayor, I'd just like to ask the Director, just for due diligence, that consultation with the local Indigenous has happened, as this wasn't something that came to the Reconciliation Committee, and just to ensure what consultation has happened. Through you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Yes, Councillor, there's been extensive consultation with the First Nations community, like the Uluru Statement of the Heart since 2017, had the most representational consultation with First Nations people. It's also been discussed informally with lots of elders in the local Banyule community. And as you heard tonight, both Uncle Charles and Sue are members of the Reconciliation Action Advisory Committee, and their request is for us, the council group, to support it. And then one of the recommendations is that we would work in partnership with the Reconciliation Action Committee and others to work in a co-design way around positive dialogue around treaty and Uluru Statement of the Heart.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor McKern?
Thank you very much to the speakers. Sorry, Councillor De Morales? It is on. Thank you very much for the reminder. Thank you kindly. Thank you to the speakers for their heartfelt words and very meaningful words. As an Australian, I would like to take this opportunity to personally accept the invitation that the Uluru Statement offers all Australians.
Just quick point of order. This is questions only at this point. We'll speak to the matter after the motion has been moved.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I will wait my turn a little bit later. Thank you.
Councillors, if there's no further questions, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion on this item. Councillor De Morales and Councillor Melican as a seconder. As mover, Mr. Councillor De Morales, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to both speakers tonight. I had the privilege of meeting with Sali, our beautiful officer over there that's been helping out with a lot of this. And we had a great discussion about how this has been very well consulted with the local Indigenous, and that's definitely something that I wanted to make sure that was definitely something that happened before we adopt something here tonight, or that I supported. And it's clear that this is something that has been going on for a very long time, and it's a beautiful thing to see it be able to come to council and for us to adopt. So thank you to both of you, and Charles, our Citizen of the Year as well. Uncle Charles, apologies, Uncle. And yeah, thank you for coming, and looking forward to the consistent work that council will do going forward. It's not just the statement, but it's the action going forward as well. So I look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
And seconder, would you like to speak?
Yes, it's always difficult to speak after Sue and Charles because they speak so well and so graciously. And it's fair to say that this has enormous community support, and I'd like to thank Reconciliation Banyule. They've been working on this for a very, very long period of time, so a great effort. And this will unite Australians. This will not divide us. This will unite us. And I always think back to the 67th referendum, which was the most supported referendum in Australia's history, and that was to recognise First Nations people in the Constitution. This referendum will give those people a voice, a much needed voice. And then we can all move forward together. And I always think we have so much to learn from the First Nations people. And I think about their culture, their language, their customs, and how they had a custom of welcome to country. No other culture in the world has a process when strangers come to their land to welcome them to their land. You think of the way we welcome strangers in our land, causes wars. And yet they have that beautiful custom, welcome to country, and after all that's happened in the last 250 years, that custom still lives and they still go through it, and we are still welcome here, which just astounds me when you consider what's happened. And the other custom I think about is how they treated the land compared to how we treat the land. They considered that they were part of the land and the land was owned them, whereas we consider we own the land and we treat it accordingly. They treated the land with so much more respect. They maintained the land and seen themselves as the custodians of the land to hand it on to their descendants. We don't have that view at all. So I welcome this opportunity. I know some people will speak against this referendum. I think the good people of Australia will come forward. I think this will be supported. Council needs to get behind this referendum needs to educate people, explain what's happening, explain the benefits, and I think, and I'm very confident and that the Australian people will realise that this is a unique opportunity in our history to move forward together and correct some of the mistakes of the past.
Any other councillors? Councillor McKern?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillors Di Morelos and Malikan for their words. I'd like to take the Speaker's invitation up, which enthusiastically I probably started a little bit too early, and that was that personal commitment. So I'd like to use my privileged 2 minutes to say that as an Australian, I personally accept the invitation expressed by our elders this evening, and also what's come through the officer's report, and state my support for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Australian Constitution, because I believe that is one of the fundamental aspects, having a voice in the Australian Constitution, including a process for agreement making and truth-telling about our history. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor Neely?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I welcome this constitutionally enshrined First Nations voice to Parliament, and I look forward to this leading to the truth-telling, the treaty-making, and a genuine step forward to consultation. I believe it's a step forward towards better outcomes and a better future for our country. I know and I acknowledge that there is a long way to go, and we won't get there if we don't make these changes. And we have to be prepared to make these changes to move forward. This is progress to improving relationships, respect, rights, advocacy and equity. I tried to say those 2 words together. It's another tool, and I see this as another tool, and there's still lots of other things that continue to happen and contribute to this. So, improving agency to help inform decisions from community leaders like Uncle Charles tonight and Sue Harris is what I'm looking forward to and why I support this. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Well, I'll take the opportunity. Look, I'd like to thank the 2 powerful speakers here before us tonight that came. We've also got 3 other great advocates for this issue as well. And there's a lot in this community, and I hear them speak, and we do have a long journey. We're only at the start of that journey to true, real reconciliation, and I think our nation will be much richer at the end of this. Now, it may never end, but it's a journey, like life and everything else is. So I'm really looking forward to this progressing, and so thank you guys for coming tonight and sharing it to a good audience tonight. And we do need to take this out far and wide, so thank you. And Mover, would you like a right of reply? No? I now then put this motion. All those in favour? I declare this motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, 3.2 Graffiti Strategy 2020 to 2024, Year 2 report. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation on the agenda's papers. I'm now calling for a motion on this item. Do I have a mover? Councillor McKern. And a seconder? Councillor Garotti. Councillor McKern, as mover, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll speak briefly to this item. Banyule residents are very proud of their city, and graffiti is something that I do get emails about constantly, and the removal of graffiti. And I think my fellow councillors have probably received the same. I'm seeing a nodding of heads. And I'm really delighted that Council has responded to that interest by involving the community in graffiti removal. We have graffiti removal kits that are one-time use kits. They're actually worth about $30 a pop, and they are free to the public. We don't necessarily have the resources to be removing all graffiti in-house, so this is an ingenious solution of involving our community. So if you're interested in using one of our graffiti kits, they're available at our customer service centres in Greensborough and in Ivanhoe, and they're promoted via our website. So all you need to do is complete a form requesting that a kit be made available, and you can participate in keeping this city beautiful. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor. And seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So these graffiti strategies were, I think, things that were rolled out when Councillor Di Pasquale and I got elected to the council. We recognised that graffiti was a major issue across the city, and things needed to be done. So we initiated the inaugural strategy, and then that's been renewed now. I think this is the third time. So we have a dedicated focus on all our key activity centres with regard to graffiti removal, and the benefits have been there. Certainly in the Watsonia Bundoora area, the level of graffiti I've seen and residents report back is lower. There's more work to be done, and in fact that there's a notice of motion on these papers later in the evening regarding a Banyule Blitz, and that will put more resourcing into tackling these things, such as cleaning graffiti, fixing our roads, fixing our footpaths, making sure that this council is focused on the basic service delivery that we're elected. So very happy with this strategy, and also later on with the notice of motion I'm putting forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Neely.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not just an issue for Banyule Council, it is an issue across the country. And what I like about this report is that Council is being proactive and looking at this from a multi-layered approach. So encouraging our young people to explore other avenues of self-expression and connection through murals, through a variety of public art. Identifying opportunities for them is key. Not to say that it's just youth, but it is a large number of youth. And other ways of being proactive, you know, removing blank canvases from the community and having, you know, designs with environmental, you know, aspects around them, plants, to make sure that it's not as attractive an option for people. So I also like the important addition that Council will explore the new technology. So exploring, you know, there's a lot of potential there to make it more difficult and for future, and making it easier for Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for the item? No? All right. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. The next item on the agenda is 3.3, Advisory and Population Committees Report, September-November 2022. There are no speakers on this item this evening. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. I will now call for a mover of this motion. Councillor Neely. Is there a seconder? Councillor McKern. Councillor Neely, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, just wanted to thank all the community representatives for their input, their dedication to these committee meetings. Your passion provides input to us councillors and increases our understanding of community needs. And that's, for me, the most valuable part of these population reports. Thank you.
Seconder, would you like to speak?
Mayor, if it's all right, I actually had a question that has just come to mind now. Is it okay if
Go
I
ahead.
ask that? Yeah, just a question of appropriate officers. But I believe that we may have called for a report to come back on looking at how we support or remunerate committee members of these population committees. And I believe as well there was a report or review into these committees. So just seeking feedback onto those two queries through yourself, Mayor.
Could I ask the Director to respond to that, please?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, in relation to the first question that you raised, Council, that report will come to Council early next year, and the second report will come to Council probably in the second quarter of next year.
Any further questions? No. Any other questions? No. Okay. Any other councillors like to speak to the item?
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few things. Just how these committees do match our council plan, and yeah, it's good to get input from people experienced, the knowledge that these people have. But all the people on these committees are mostly volunteers who are quite happy to contribute their knowledge, expertise, and life experiences so that the Banyule can function at a higher rate, at a higher level. One of the things that has been raised is the meeting frequencies, and sometimes the meeting, 4 times a year is a bit infrequent, and it's difficult to have momentum with those sort of meeting arrangements. So certainly something I'm happy to look at, and I think it's something we should look at to make sure we are benefiting from the experience, the knowledge, and also from the willingness of these people to work hard on these committees. And some of them are very, very keen to work hard and to try and make their area of expertise of a benefit to the council. So I'd like to thank all the members for these committees, because as you can see, there's quite a few of them. Lots of very active community people out there, very eager to help. So these committees have been very successful in the past, and I'm hoping they will continue to be successful. But I think we do need to look at the frequencies of the agendas and the agendas.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? No? Then I'd now like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 3.4, Sporting Facilities User Guide and Allocation Policy, Sporting Facilities Capital Works Policy. There is one speaker on this item this evening. Wendy Pelsner will address the council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Wendy, please approach the lectern. Thank you. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, Mayor. Congratulations. My planning property report says that James Reserve is a park recreational ground. Seems to me council want it to be a sports ground, and today with your sports facility user guys labels James Reserve as a sports overflow ground, C grade. So it worries me that in 2021 you went and put up floodlights on a less than ideal ground, which should have gone to a proper size ground. Winton Reserve is double the size of James Reserve. So the promotion of James Reserve as a sports ground, be it an overflow ground, on your website, mostly used for sport, when it is a park. It's a beautiful native tree-lined park where many residents go and use it. It could be a destination if council promoted it on its website for the Heidelberg City, when people look up on their phone, oh, where's the park? Oh, there's one there, but they won't go to a sports ground. You know, it could be, it's a small ground. You don't say it's a small ground on your website, which you say other reserves are. and mainly used for sport. So I wonder what the ultimate agenda is for council, because I believe in the end you're looking at it to say, well, it's not a proper size ground in a couple of years. You've put fences up, limited the use of the ground, and as councils are doing today, they're reviewing their reserves and it's not being used properly and we'll sell it off. That's our worry. We want it promoted as a park, recreational, not as a sports ground. It's very worrying.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight. Do we have some questions? Councillor McKern?
Your query around the potential of selling off the land. And to respond to that query, I'm wondering if the appropriate officer could confirm what the status of James Reserve is and the Investment Council has made in James Reserve, and whether there are any intentions to sell the land.
Could the relevant director please speak to that?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. James Reserve isn't listed as surplus open space land. It forms part of our open space network. The master plan envisages improvements to the ground. If we were of a view that it was not required and something that we were going to sell as an asset, we certainly wouldn't be developing a master plan for its improvement and investment. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. Does that go some way, Speaker, to
well,
addressing
it's always
your
labelled a
concern about
master
sale?
plan, but they moved the toilet block to the other side of the ground, and there was a petition saying it's too close to us. So they moved it right next door to a newly built house. It's too close to residents. It just doesn't fit what a park is that adds value to the Heidelberg area. And the
Point of order.
brings
This is out of meeting procedure.
brings it down.
Yeah, I think, look, you can't have a two-way conversation. Councillor McKern, do you have any further questions?
I just want to thank the Speaker again for raising her concerns and to allay fears that that land is not proposed for sale and will remain a park. I hope that is helpful, goes some way to allaying your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, councillors... Councillors, there is an officer recommendation on the agenda papers, and we have a mover, Councillor Garotti, seconder, Liz Neely. As mover, Councillor Garotti, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy to move this. So one of the principles that we've now embedded in the policy is to increase the weighting or criteria that is allocated toward the inclusiveness of clubs. And through discussions with officers, the intention is to increase that weighting even further the next time this policy comes up for renewal. And so what that will do in practical terms is that clubs that have programs that are out there to support people with disabilities, clubs that have programs that are inclusive, that engage people with all abilities, they're going to get a progressively higher weighting for use of our precious community facilities. And so this is practical ways of how council can use our levers, and leasing out our facilities is one of them, to clubs and organisations that want to do things to increase participation for everyone in our community. And for me, as a passion, particularly for our people with disabilities that live in our community. So that's a key thing that we're advancing here tonight through this policy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. As seconder, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor Garotti covered a bit of what I was saying, but I wanted to highlight that this item 3.4 is a policy about all clubs in the whole entire municipality. It's about the best use of our facilities. It is about protecting our facilities, ensuring they're meeting the needs of clubs, the community, now and into the future. So, there's an agreement that our sporting facilities should be safe, as Councillor Garotti said, inclusive and welcoming. So I support this Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor Milliken?
Yeah, I'd just like to reassure the Speaker that as our population grows, public open space becomes even more valuable to this council, and we will not, the idea that, I'm not sure where you've developed that idea that we were looking at selling this, because we certainly wouldn't be spending money on a piece of land we were intending to sell, and there's never been any intention or any suggestion that that land would be sold. But I'd like to just thank Melinda Ramsey. I know she's worked extremely hard on this policy. Has a wonderful understanding of the needs and the requirements of all the clubs. And there's always tension between the summer clubs and the winter clubs about access to the grounds. And I think this policy creates the right balance in between with that tension, with the winter clubs wanting to get access to the grounds prior to the summer clubs finishing. There is always that tension. I understand that tension very well because I've been involved in it. But no, I think this is a wonderful policy. I think it's a very well balanced and based on a huge amount of discussion and a lot of work with a lot of the clubs. And I think it makes the right balance. And I think it's something that all the clubs will accept and come to understand. So I'd like to thank Melinda Ramsey for her great effort in producing this policy and her work in making sure we get the best possible outcomes for all our sporting clubs.
Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Well, I think I'll just speak quickly. This is a refresh of both the user guide and allocation policy, which is good to see. We want all clubs to have equal footing and support them. And tonight we're receiving the first facility capital works policy. And it's a really important piece of work, this one, because there's an endless demand for us as a council to increase and increase, and it's almost an arms race to deliver the biggest sporting club facilities. And I think it's really important for us to make a clear indication of where we can support a club. And so I'm really comfortable and I think this is a great step forward in making sure that we support all clubs the best way possible. Now I would like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Next item on the agenda is 4.1, 2021-22 State of the Environment Report. There is one speaker on this item this evening, Michelle Jarvis from Friends of Banyule, will address Council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Michelle, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'm President of Friends of Banyule, and I'm also on the Banyule Environmental and Climate Action Advisory Committee, and we discussed the State of the Environment Report back in December 2021. Overall, it was well received, and thank Council staff for their hard work preparing it and for the positive achievements that are there. But what BCAC and Friends of Banyule suggested, and that the community is interested in, is in adding an environmental performance indicator of percentage canopy within the Banyule City Council area and the percentage change in tree canopy. This information would also inform the urban forest strategy. BCAC also noted that a permeability index, hard surface versus permeable surfaces, was also a good indicator of biodiversity and should be tracked over time. So they're just comments generally. Friends of Banyule, independent BCAC, also thinks that monitoring of Crefts glider by the Montmorency Biodiversity Group could also be included, and that would add to the information that we have on Darebin Creek. Regarding the net gain of trees on public land, a query is, does this figure include trees removed by council? Given that we don't have data from council on tree removal, data on trees removed by road projects such as NELP and Fitzsimmons Lane widening, data on trees removed by public transport projects such as LXRP and VicTrack, the tree picture is we're likely to have a considerable net loss and also consider the loss of trees from Greensborough College and Ford Park, etc. I've just got about 10 seconds, 30 seconds, please. Overall, apart from the issues with tree loss, we also have potential biodiversity risks. But we also really want to acknowledge the positive work of the Bush crew, the action on climate change, FOGO, and the water harvesting, which is very positive. And we anticipate or hope that the data on tree canopy and permeable surface areas will be available in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for the Speaker or officers? No? Then, councillors, there is an officer recommendation on the agenda papers. I will call for a councillor to move this item. Councillor McKern. Seconded. Councillor Melican. Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the Speaker. I particularly liked your idea regarding environmental performance indicators and the tracking of environmental performance over time. So thank you for that suggestion. I've certainly noted it. I also want to thank the Council's Environment team for reporting on various positive achievement in this year's State of Environment report. I was particularly heartened, a bit like the Speaker, to read about the reduction of corporate emissions being on track to achieve net zero by 2028 and the increase of the Crefts gliders from 8 to 40 on the Darebin Creek. And this is no doubt due to the good collective work being done by Council Bush crews, not just Banyule Council, but the collective councils along the creek and our local Friends Volunteers group. But this is, as has been alluded to by our Speaker, no reason to become complacent. The State of the Climate report recently released by the CSIRO and the Bureau of Meteorology warned that our climate is becoming more erratic, with our temperature having increased now by 1.47 degrees since 1910. It's perhaps timely, now that corporate emission reductions is tracking well for Banyule, to shine a stronger lens on our community emissions, which contribute 97% of Banyule's emissions. While the State of the Climate report places a lot more pressure on the federal government to increase climate targets, you'll recall that Banyule's target of zero emission for the community is zero by 2040 and will require a lot more work than what's currently being done to achieve this target on both the advocacy and operational fronts. I believe we need to shift more action to community emissions and what we're doing in that space. And towards this end, I will be seeking more regular reporting, Mr Mayor. Councillors are briefed quarterly on our corporate emissions, and we need to be briefed more regularly on the Community Action Plan, how it's being implemented, what interim targets are being met, and as the Speaker has stated, yet again, environmental performance indicators tracking our performance over time. So we will be addressing those concerns, and thank you for raising them to our Speaker. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak?
Just a few comments here. If you read this report, it sounds like things are going along quite well and everything's fine. Well, that's certainly not the case. You look at the recent floods, the temperature rises previous speaker spoke about, but also the loss of habitat, the loss of species right across the world, potential loss of the Great Barrier Reef, and so many other indicators which are saying that we're not doing enough and things are getting worse. And you only got to understand, living in Melbourne the last few months, just how the weather has not followed the usual predictable elements it normally does. And I know we have seasonal variations in years to years, but the weather just doesn't seems to be changing, and this year it is incredibly wet, and yet we all know that there's a drought coming, and the length and degree of that drought could be quite severe. So In Melbourne, we are certainly very vulnerable to temperature changes. A small drop in water, in rainfall, will have a significant impact financially, culturally, and livability-wise. So there is so much more we need to do. And this council declared a climate emergency. That's how we need to act, because it is getting to the stage that if we don't do things drastically, and it's not just for us council, it's for the state, it's for the federal governments, but it's for the world to act and act quickly. So I'll support this tonight, but by no means do I think that we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Well, I'll speak. Look, we're on a journey on this one. Like earlier I said, this year we've done the largest piece of climate emissions reduction when we cleaned up our electricity supply and purchased clean energy. So that's a big step, but there's a lot of other steps coming and a lot of risks in not delivering on this. Now, it's very important that we have all eyes on board, and thank you, Michelle. Tonight you've pointed out 2 ways we can assess our performance and step forward, and we do need to mature our reporting and our actions as we go further along this journey. So thank you for that, and all the other committed people that are forcing and ensuring that council does continue to move in a good direction. Now, I would like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Next agenda item is 4.2, Urban Forest Strategy 2022 to 2032. There are 4 speakers on this item. A written statement will now be read on behalf of Susan O'Toole. Susan is against the recommendation. It will be read by Natasha Swan, Director of City Development.
Thank you, through me. Dear councillors, this draft does not address the issue of the biodiversity impacts of tree species selection. We share our city with a vast array of native animals, birds, reptiles and insects, interdependent with plants. If we want to prevent further extinctions in this age of extinction, we need to be vigilant in planting tree species that support resilience, not only for humans, but for all species. Council has the very popular Gardens for Wildlife program. We need streets for wildlife. For an article on Independence, search BirdLife Australia lerps. Lerps are tiny insects which live on native plants. They are a major food source for bats, possums and many native birds. Lerps do not live on exotic species, currently being planted en masse in streets by BCC in Ivanhoe and other suburbs. There needs to be professional biodiversity expertise consultation to support biodiversity resilience in the selection of species to be planted in our streets and parklands. Exotic deciduous street trees, that's a mouthful, fill gutters with leaves, most of which are washed or blown into the stormwater system, impacting on our creeks and rivers. If we value our extraordinary native species, we must support them by being informed of their needs for survival. Our streets can become a network of support for biodiversity. Unfortunately, the selection of trees currently being planted is actually counteractive to resilience of species. Planting golden rain trees from Taiwan and Irish strawberry trees from Europe and crepe myrtles from China and jacaranda from South Africa, ginkgoa saratoga from Japan may be creating a diverse tree canopy, but sadly these trees are actually detrimental because they are all taking the place of native trees that can sustain and support our local birds, animals and insects for years to come. I want the Council to support the future resilience of all species as we are in an ecology emergency. Therefore, I think there is more work to be done on the Urban Forest Strategy draft to make sure it is the best.
Thank you. Alicia Curry will address Council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Alicia, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Sorry, would you say? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm speaking for the recommendation because we need to get moving on this. We're already 20 years behind where we need to be with replacing our tree canopy. So many planning applications get approved and you approve things yourself in spite of your policies. So even though I'm saying put this out to community consultation, I think that there's a great big divide between the departments in council and the great big divide between planning and what your urban forest strategy is about. And while council approved plans to remove 51 trees on public use zone land, I think it's in complete contradiction. So what we want is a bridge between this policy and the planning applications and the planning scheme. We want to see advocacy for you to take this to state government and ensure that these policies are reflected in the planning scheme. And I'd like to see every single planning application have reference to these policies. And when you do that, and we can see how you validate the planning process against your policies for the environment, then I think we're heading in the right direction. And I think this also misses a lot of things. It doesn't cover anything on public land. It doesn't cover everything on VicTrack, VicRoads, state government. It doesn't address the fact that council has no protection against its public use zoning and no intention to put protection against public use simply because money speaks louder than environment. And whenever you're offered a whole lot of cash, you are choosing the cash over the environment. And until that changes, this policy is just simply writing words on a piece of paper. So please, please find us the bridge to the planning scheme and then we can have some trust in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Now Robin Roberts will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Robin, please.
Thank you,
you have 2
councillors
minutes.
and staff and audience. I'm objecting to this because there's a cost of $6.8 million associated with this plan. And basically all it is planting more trees on our nature strips in places where we haven't got as many as we should have and making it diverse. And as you heard a previous speaker talk about the diversity that's being planted, we're getting plants from a whole lot of other countries and not native species. Now, I like exotics and I want neighbourhood character protected because I want to see the similar vegetation to what we have had in southern Banyule persist, but I can certainly see the arguments about diversity when you're planting jacarandas and ginkgos, and I love those trees, you're not getting the environmental benefit. So this plan needs a lot of rethinking. It doesn't refer to planning enough. There's a throwaway line about planning that we have planning controls for trees. One sentence in the whole thing and it's not true because the planning controls that we have to save trees on private land are completely inadequate. It's not necessarily council's fault, it's the state government's fault, but we need to be active in telling the state government what they need to change so we can achieve our objectives. 64% of the land in cities like ours is private land. So 64% of the land that trees can be planted on is private land. We're fiddling around the edges when we're just talking about nature strips and parks. I sent you something on this earlier today because there's a lot to say about this report, but I was unhappy with the consultation. It was just a survey on the website that people filled in. 4 people wrote submissions. I wrote 40 pages. I spent weeks writing my submission, and we were told that we would have an interview with the staff because it was such a lengthy submission, but we didn't have anything. So I'm not happy that they've actually consulted properly. I'm not happy that they've thought about planning controls where they thought they would, but there's a throwaway sentence. So I hope you have time to read this, but I'd like this delayed so it can be improved, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Robin. Our next speaker is Michelle Jarvis from Friends of Banyule. You'll be representing in person and for the recommendation. Please, you have 2 minutes.
I'd just like to note that the Urban Forest Strategy is a critical policy document and should touch, inform planning policy, planning decisions, ESD, public health, urban heat stress policy. As with climate change, it's a growing issue with vulnerable people being impacted the worst, and that it also impacts infrastructure replacement and upgrading. Trees give us so much environmental services, assisting with the water cycle, like flood mitigation, carbon dioxide sequestration, climate change mitigation, generation of oxygen, habitat biodiversity, and minimising the urban heat island effect. And studies have shown that canopy increases decreased surface temperature is well understood. And critically, trees give us a sense of well-being and wellness, and the mental health impacts are pretty clear as well. And that during COVID and lockdown, people flocked to their gardens or parklands. So it's, it's significant. And I'd just like to point out that the urban forestry strategy is also an equity issue, as I note that regarding trees, Banyule is a local government area of the haves and the have-nots in terms of tree canopy. So we have extremes of canopy cover over some suburbs, which is acceptable cover in Eaglemont, Montmorency, while other areas such as Belfield and Bundoora have around 10%. Clearly far more ambitious targets for these areas are required, and the Banyule Council tree canopy targets shouldn't be skewed by the suburbs already blessed with adequate canopy. Just 10 seconds again. Suburbs such as Watsonia, Bundoora, Heidelberg Heights and West Heidelberg are areas that suffer from the urban heat island effects and the awful impacts of the metropolitan transport infrastructure projects. Therefore, the Council should strive for more ambitious targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speakers this evening? No? Okay. Now, councillors, I believe there is a councillor motion which differs from the officer recommendation on the agenda papers. Do I have a mover of that? Councillor McKern?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For a council where its residents cite the main reason for choosing to live in Banyule as its environment, parks and trees, I think we owe it to the community to move this alternative motion to extend community consultation and provide these forums. So what I wish to move is that Council endorses the draft Urban Forest Strategy, Attachment 1, for a 12-week community consultation period from the 12th of December to the 10th of March. And 2, that Council acknowledge the community consultation will include a presence on Shaping Banyule, targeted social media, face-to-face engagement with key community stakeholders, and 2 community forums, and that it receive a further report in June 2023 to report on consultation outcomes and any recommended changes or additions for consideration in the final adoption of the draft Urban Forest Strategy.
Thank you, councillor. Do you have a question for the? Okay, so we have a seconder, councillor Garotti. Councillor McKern, as mover, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I may, if I could, just extend over 3 minutes if it's looking tight. First of all, I would like to thank the Parks and Environment team for their work in pulling together this draft document. It's been a long process over a year, and it's been quite involved, and certainly the Parks team has had their work cut out for them with the briefings held with the councillors. The draft highlights the many important reasons for planting trees, and those reasons have been pointed out by our speakers, Susan Toole, Robin Roberts and Michelle Jovis. Thank you very much for those. including, of course, biodiversity, amenity, and countering the effects of climate change and urban heat island. I know that across our municipality, residents have different views and different appreciation levels when it comes to tree canopy. Hence the concern I want to focus on. Thanks to our changing climate, we are seeing rising temperatures that mean more hotter days with less cooling relief at night. And this is affecting public health and well-being. Those statistics have been presented to us. Heat waves are the biggest killers of all natural disasters in Victoria. Just look back to the Victorian Black Saturday fires of 2009, where 173 people died in the fires, yet 374 people died of heat-related causes during the heat waves surrounding that Saturday. Yet we know that trees and green spaces cool cities and that trees can cool homes by about 6 degrees. According to a paper by Dr. Greg Moore, a leading Melbourne expert on tree science, we should be maximising the benefits provided by trees and their canopy cover, and we should be trying to achieve a canopy of 30%. I believe this is the figure that ultimately Banyule should be aspiring to achieve. The issue here, of course, has been pointed out by our speakers, is that there isn't sufficient space on public land to achieve 30%. And there needs to be a contribution from trees on private property in front and backyards. The rub is that our planning rules for greater urban densification are seeing us lose trees, not gain them. This is, of course, not only affecting Banyule, it's happening right across Melbourne at a rate of about 1 to 1.5% per annum. So what do we need to be doing? We need to be advocating a lot more for our planning laws to affect more protection of canopy trees on private land and more new canopy trees. A target of 30% would help our advocacy work. What I'm arguing for today, and that's come through in the alternative recommendation, is more meaningful public consultation on the draft strategy. With due respect, Mr Mayor, I did ask for a little bit more time to speak.
Carry on.
Because I don't believe we've got the formula right with respect to community consultation, and I believe we should be aspiring for 30% to cover 30% canopy cover by 2050. That's over 1/4 of a century away. If we as a nation aspire to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050, surely we as a city can achieve 30% canopy cover in over a 1/4 of a century. As mentioned, for a council where its residents cite the main reason for choosing to live in Banyule is its environment, its parks and trees, we owe it to our community to do more to engage more broadly and more meaningfully. Therefore, the alternative recommendation for longer and more community consultation is what's being proposed this evening, as well as the face-to-face public forums. I think they could go a long way in hearing more of what our community wants from this urban forest strategy. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, look, really like to just thank our first speaker, and Councillor McKern, for her leadership on this issue and also related issue of the urban food strategy. Well done, Councillor, for your leadership on this and bringing this to the group. Really impressed as well that we're going to extend the community consultation process, and just hearing from our speakers tonight the need to do that and to really fully engage, to hear that feedback. I heard one of our speakers did a 40-page submission, so I think we owe it to ourselves and the officers involved to read that, to digest it. And there was a call for an interview, so certainly our CEO and our Director of City Assets, I think that we should respect that request and tap into that expertise in our community. It's important that we get this right and we don't rush it. I think, as Councillor McKern was articulating to me earlier this evening, this is a 30, 40, 50-year strategy. So let's get this right. Let's invest the extra time. Let's not rush it. Further report will come in June. So be it. That's when it comes. but hopefully it's a report that represents what the community is looking for. I'm pleased within the strategy that there is a proper process now for review of street trees and a proper process around how that happens, because there's often been some community angst and community misunderstanding of how that works. I'm also really excited about the community forums, and we're having the conversation earlier as councillors, one south of Bell Street and one north of Bell Street. And I'd really encourage some of my colleagues and also some in the community, get in your car, whether it be a Tesla, jump on your bike, or get on public transport, come north of Bell Street and hear what the community there has to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other speakers? Councillor Melican.
Just a few comments here. This is a very important strategy, so we need to make sure we get it right. So I think extending the consultation period is correct, but and it is a 30-year strategy. But my concern about going too late is that we need to get started, and we need to get this strategy completed prior to the budget process, so we can actually start doing some things in the next budget. Because it's good to have a strategy, but without the dollars behind it, you're not going to get very far. So I'll support this tonight, but I think we need to move very quickly to make sure that we need to make sure we get the strategy right, but we need to make sure we have the dollars behind it so we can start implementing the recommendations out of that strategy.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No, I'll just put a few comments in as well, that we were thinking that this, or hoping that this might be out for last year's budgetary process. And we've taken this on a lot of steps, reviewed it, councillors and the community, but the thing is we do need to get this right. And if it takes a bit longer, I understand, and I support the extension of time this evening. And we do welcome all those contributions, whatever format they come in at. And I'm personally going to make myself very much available for anyone that wants to engage in conversations on this inside those consultations and outside those consultation sessions. With that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to the next agenda item 5.1, Gloucester Drive and Bristol Street, Heidelberg, review of temporary road closure. There are 4 speakers on this item. All are written statements. A written statement will now be read on behalf of Hassan, who is speaking against the recommendation. This will be read by Darren Bennett, Director of City Assets and City Services.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This initiative is not solving any real issue, as data suggests it is suppressing the already low traffic volume on Bristol and Gloucester Drive from 538 to 226. The transferring that traffic towards Berkeley Avenue, causing the traffic increase on Berkeley from 644 to 746. Prior to this initiative, traffic volume was evenly shared, and now Berkeley Avenue is taking more than 3 times the tragic load. That should be traffic load.
Okay, thank you. A written statement will now be read out on behalf of Peter Borbiro, who is speaking for the recommendation. This will be read out by Kath Brackett, Director of Community Wellbeing.
Thank you, Mayor. I support the continued closure of Gloucester Drive and Bristol Street. Prior to the closure, the incidence of excessive speeding and hoon drivers became intolerable and on many occasions dangerous. Since the closure, the amenity of the street has increased markedly, with no evidence of speeding or unacceptable driver behaviour occurring. The further improvement of the area closure would be welcome, with, for example, some landscaping and greening along with some bicycle access. Also, the installation of a no-through road sign at the start of Gloucester Drive would warn drivers of the change conditions. Thank you.
The next written statement will be read out on behalf of Richard Webb, who is speaking against the recommendation. This will be read by Darren Bennett, Director of City Assets and City Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. We oppose the recommended permanent closure of Gloucester Drive. A petition has been organised in opposition and we request you refer the decision until the next meeting. There were 5 days' notice of the report and petitions need to be submitted weeks in advance. This closure is an extreme option available to Council when seeking to address modest concerns, and it is not proportionate or appropriate, like cracking a nut with a sledgehammer. The concerns, as investigated by Council, found no objective problem with the volume or speed of traffic, and it was only pursuing this course of action at the behest of a selected group. The process to date has lacked natural justice. The immediate local community has been greatly under-consulted, and the data put forward in support of the closure has been misrepresented. Support of the closure has decreased over the trial amongst the limited consultation and is less than 50% of those surveyed. This did not include neighbouring streets who were not consulted but have been negatively impacted by the increased diverted traffic. It seems illogical and inadequate to consult only one side of those that are directly impacted by any course of action. It is actively ignoring part of the community by excluding and silencing it, whilst expecting it to bear the impact of the decision. It's a dangerous precedent to set that any minority group can demand the closure of a local road without supporting evidence or majority support. There are other proportionate traffic calming measures that could be implemented that are more appropriate and effective in alleviating issues as supported by the data. This is not us versus them. A holistic approach should be taken to rebalance the local road network rather than prioritise one street amenity to the detriment of the other local streets. We implore councillors to undertake the proper community consultation of those impacted and investigate alternative courses of action that do not only have a one-sided outcome.
Thank you. And the last written statement will be read out on behalf of Liesl Gillam, who is speaking for the recommendation. This will be read by Kath Brackett, Director of Community Wellbeing.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Council for taking all the affected residents' concerns seriously. The temporary closure has been immensely successful and provided a safe environment for all residents living in Bristol Street and Gloucester Drive. The impact of the speed humps in Berkeley Avenue has had an immediate and dangerous impact on these two small and quiet residential streets. Whilst I appreciate that residents of Berkeley wanted these calming measures, it's of some concern that they were not concerned about the immediate impact that it was obviously going to have on the adjoining streets. Prior to the temporary closure, cars in these two streets were damaged and on a number of near misses with pedestrians were observed as speeding motorists, including those that reside in Berkeley Avenue and adjoining streets, continued to use Gloucester and Bristol as a rut-run, cut-through route. Traffic counting should also show that the temporary closure has in fact reduced the traffic flow throughout all the streets concerned, including Berkeley. Another benefit of the closure has seen bicycle riders utilise the path network where it connects with Gloucester to travel to the council-led bike route in Banyule Road. I would strongly urge Council to vote in favour of a permanent closure of Bristol Street to ensure an ongoing reduction in cut-through traffic throughout the whole of the Banyule estate and to provide safe streets for residents. The permanent closure and creating a safer environment will also ensure that the strong community feel within this unique neighbourhood will continue. All the residents I have spoken to are extremely happy with the outcome from the temporary closure and are keen for the road to remain closed, as the concern is that if it is open, the traffic flow will surpass previous levels and the problem will only be worse. Thank you again for supporting the ongoing closure of Bristol Street.
Thank you. With that, councillors, I believe there is a councillor motion which is different to the officer recommendation in the agenda papers. I'll now call on the councillor to move this motion. Councillor Mitsonikos.
Sorry, thanks, Mayor. I put that Council defer this matter relating to Gloucester Drive and Bristol Street, Heidelberg, with a review of temporary road closure in order to consider further information and community input, and to hear a foreshadowed petition which is coming regarding the matter. 2 retains the current temporary road closure arrangement in Bristol Street at Berkeley Ave until a report has been presented to Council for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Neely. The mover like to speak.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, just briefly, it's thank you to all the speakers tonight and also to the officers for the hard work. It's important that we do listen to all of our residents, and it has just obviously come to light that there is a petition against it, and so I feel like we do need to actually listen to those residents to make sure that they are being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to reiterate what Councillor Mitzanikos said, that the deferral is to allow for the petition to come to Council. And in this situation, we have to look at all of the data that's been presented to us and look at the experts who will provide us with more information before coming to a decision. You know, we know across the municipality that we have streets that are blocked off, and that residents, once they're blocked off, they don't let it go. They like to keep it that way because it keeps the street quiet. So there's obviously different opinions on this issue, and we need more information. So I support the deferral. Thank you.
Would any other councillor wish to speak? No? Okay, well, with that, I would now like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to the next agenda item, 5.2 Wallace Street, Ivanhoe, speed reduction treatment consultation. There is one speaker on this item, Nathan Sterling, will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Nathan, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thanks, Mayor and councillors. Self-evidently, you have lots of stuff to talk about. You seem to meet very regularly and you have huge agendas, and I know you gave this issue a fair bit of time in August. So, in a way, I feel a bit, I won't say I'm embarrassed coming here, because I just feel that I am compelled to come here because I think the way it's turned out is not maybe the way that was within the spirit of the August meeting. You might remember, I did send everyone an email this afternoon. You probably haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is in your inboxes there, which is at more length. To summarise, after the last meeting, there was to be a consultation about these slow points. There was a letter sent by council officers, but I'd call it a survey as opposed to a consultation. You had to tick a box, yes or no. Do you agree with the proposal of the slow point? Bearing in mind that the cover letter said that if you have the slow point, you're going to lose 17 parking spots in the street. Now, I don't know exactly how many parking spots are in the street. My guess is about 24 or something like that. So it's pretty much the whole parking in the street would go. Obviously, the residents weren't going to agree to that. Personally, the parking wasn't an issue for me. My issue was more, I've seen people being nearly hit, and I feel a moral obligation that something serious is going to happen. Someone's going to be seriously injured or worse because of the traffic behaviour in that street. So obviously the residents voted against it. I mean, that would be obvious. And I wasn't the primary petitioner, but basically most people have given up on it now. Now, I think there are 3 issues that are outstanding and that never got adequately addressed. Why can't you close the street off when Miles Street is closed off? We're told the infrastructure is different. Why is it different? I've asked that question, I don't know. Why can't you have turning bans? It said that it will discourage other legitimate users of the street. I mean, I think the residents would agree to the turning bans. Who are the legitimate users of the streets? The people using it as a rat run. And thirdly, and most maybe obviously, why can't you have a 40-kilometre zone? It said that it doesn't meet the Department of Transport guidelines. Now, I've read the transport guidelines. My reading of it, it would qualify, and I've elaborated at length in that email why. But it seems that there's not even been any discussion with the Department of Transport about whether you could do it. So what's the harm in asking them and investigating it? So it just seems that obviously you rely on the council officers for advice. I can't expect you're all going to go into the minutiae of it, but I just feel that this is being overlooked and the human consequences could be quite tragic. I've got no vested interest in it at all. I assure you, it's nice to come and meet you and talk, but, there are other things that one could be doing other than this. But it does really concern me from what I've seen over many, many years, and it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse. Despite whatever volume and traffic studies you've seen, I can tell you it's only getting worse. You just come there in the morning or the afternoon and you'll see it for yourself. And the amount of kids that are crossing that road to the Scout Hall or coming home from school or going up to Coles Plaza, it's a very high pedestrian usage. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the Speaker tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McKern?
I'd like to acknowledge the Speaker's comments and particularly the three questions the Speaker has raised. And rather than asking the Speaker a question, may I, Mr. Mayor, put those three questions to the appropriate officer? And I believe the questions were, why can't we close the street? Why can't we have turning bans? And why can't we implement a 40-kilometre speed zone? Can those three questions raised by the Speaker be put to the appropriate officer, Mr. Mayor?
Could we have a response, please, from the appropriate officer?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Look, in terms of road closure, obviously Miles was closed in about the mid-80s, so I think 85, 86 region. We had different requirements for road closures back then, different turning requirements for vehicles such as garbage trucks and emergency vehicles. And so if we apply today's standards on that basis, we as officers would have difficulty recommending obviously the closure of Miles Street to current day standards. So it's about the ability for the larger vehicles, especially obviously the garbage trucks and emergency vehicles, to be able to turn around in a safe way without reversing. On the second point, so turn bans, so there was a bit of commentary in the August report about turn bans. It's mainly the effect, the majority of people it affects is the residents, they're not exempt. They would have to drive around the block to access their street. So in my experience, the amount of turn bans we've implemented is very few over my 20-year career, mainly for the fact that residents have to balance the need of their access over the balance of obviously the reduced traffic in the street. So, but there was a bit of commentary on that in the August report, Councillor. And in terms of the 40-kilometre zone, so obviously a major traffic control item under the road safety regulations. So council doesn't have the ability to implement them. Department of Transport has to approve council implementing them, even on our roads. We have had discussions with officers at Department of Transport who would be the ones approving. They indicated that that they would assess any application put to them. It needs to be in accordance with their guidelines. If it wasn't, they'd be unlikely to support a 40-kilometre speed reduction, and that's obviously the advice that we've provided back to council on that basis.
Thank you, Mr. Risby. Is there scope for us to advocate to the Department of Transport regarding a 40-kilometre speed zone?
Through you, Mayor. We can definitely apply for one using their process to apply, so we can write to them and obviously request a 40-kilometre speed zone, and obviously they would review that request, possibly ask us for further information, which would provide, and then obviously they would make their assessment on that basis. So there's a formal process to go through, but we could write to them and make that request.
And my final question, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Risby is the Speaker raised consultation around the resolution to offer the two slow points, angled slowing down points at either end of the street, or sorry, I think it was central and end of the street, and made the comment that the consultation was more of a survey than bona fide consultation. Can you comment on that and how the consultation may have been done perhaps more meaningfully, particularly with respect to the range of different feedback responses that are in the report. Could the consultation have been done in another way?
Obviously, through you, Mayor, consultation comes in various forms. This is our standard approach that we take for traffic treatments in terms of a yes/no answer. It gives us a clear indication from residents that we're consulting with about their view. We do allow for additional comments in that process. In terms of could we have undertaken another way, the resolution was specific regarding two-lane angled slow points. So we couldn't have opened it up to various options based on that resolution. Do we normally? We need to assess, obviously, any treatment in the road to make sure it meets all the current standards. And so we don't normally put out various options or an open option because we need to do that assessment first. Residents may obviously come up with treatments that are appropriate, but they also might come up with things that we can't implement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now, do we have a further question?
Just
Councillor
a quick
Neely?
question to the officer, and it was just about whether the Department of Transport guidelines, does it meet the requirement? Does this particular street meet those requirements that you're aware of?
Through you, Mayor, our assessment is no, it doesn't meet those requirements. And that's provide that advice, obviously, to council on that basis.
Thank you. Is that it? Okay, now we have a motion on the papers, but do we have an amended motion being put by a councillor this evening?
We do, Mr Mayor, yes.
Yes. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I'll read it out. And essentially, it's to retain the first point of the officer's recommendation that notes that most of the stakeholders in Wallace Street do not support the implementation of two-angled, two-lane slow points in Wallace Street, Ivanhoe. And two, the alternative is to undertake further consultation with residents in Wallace Street and the 10th Ivanhoe Scouts, including holding a meeting on the pros and cons associated with different options and delegate officers to make the final determination on the speed reduction treatment plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Melican. Councillor McKern, as mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the Speaker for attending these meetings on a number of occasions now. I'd just like to speak to something mentioned by Mr Risby, our Transport and Environment Manager, with regards to the consultation. And yes, in August, when Council resolved to offer the two-angled, two-lane slow points to residents via consultation as an option they might accept to slow down traffic in Wallace Street, I think we, as a council, got it wrong. We got it wrong because we shouldn't have named down a single solution. The feedback from stakeholders reveals this. And the letter and the way it was done is further evidence that there could have been another way of resolving this matter, and that is to have a session of face-to-face consultation. When we look at Wallace Street and its location, sure, there might be some technical evidence as to not meeting requirements for slowing down traffic. However, let's look at some other evidence. Wallace Street is in a high-use area. It sits squarely within the Ivanhoe Major Activity Centre framework plan. Look at the officer's report that speaks to high pedestrian and cyclist activity in shopping precincts and schools. For example, Ivanhoe Shopping Precinct on Upper Heidelberg Road. Wallace Street is only a couple of minutes from the shopping precinct on Upper Heidelberg Road. Wallace Street is only a couple of minutes' walk to two primary schools which contain over 650 students. On this occasion, I think the anecdotal evidence is outstanding for some form of traffic treatment required in Wallace Street. The people who live there, the scouts who use that area, 10th Ivanhoe Scouts, are right on the corner there, and kids are walking to that scout hall. They're going up to the shops through the laneway that crosses Wallace Street. It is an area that could do with further consultation with residents to come up with a more acceptable solution before we have an accident. So there are safety and risk concerns, fellow councillors, to take into consideration here, not just some distant state government evidenced plan. So I do implore you to consider what's been presented this evening and consider the opportunity for further consultation and give the Wallace Street residents a fair go.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, I will make a few comments. It is our responsibility and to make sure that it's safe for all road users, all street users, all pedestrians, cyclists and motorists. But as we saw from the previous item, where we were petitioned to do something and we did that, and it's had an impact somewhere else, and the people that see that they're being disadvantaged by a change have come to council and want it reversed. Exactly the same thing will happen in Wallace Street. If we ban right turns into Wallace Street, then there'll be rat running done somewhere else. If we put speed treatments in there that make it difficult to go down Wallace Street, then the traffic will go somewhere else. It just highlights how we can, as a community, we need to respect people's their rights and their ability to live safely in their own homes, to be able to move around safely. And yet constantly we get these requests to do something about my street, but do people take responsibility not to drive in an inappropriate manner in other people's streets? And we see this constantly. I think as a community we need to just have a bit more respect for other people. We need to ensure that our actions don't cause stress or harm to other people. And we need to make sure that at all times we do the right thing and these problems would go away. But unfortunately that's not the case, and council's caught in a position here, if we do something, someone else will complain. If we don't do something, then the Wallace Street residents will complain. But I will support having more consultations, but I didn't hear any solutions tonight. I heard that we don't want this, we don't want that. Would 40Ks fix it? Potentially, potentially not. Would the department agree to it? Probably not. Would other people then request 40Ks in their street? Probably. Where does it end? So I'll support this tonight, but it is incredibly complex and it's difficult for council to make it safe when people ignore the rules and ignore other people's requirements.
Thank you. Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. Look, I'm always enamoured with the passion of Councillor McKern and how well I think you do in representing your constituents and bringing matters to the council. It's admirable. It's certainly, I look at that and think, yeah, that's a standard that even I aspire to. So well done for being a very strong advocate. But I must say I'm not able to support the amended recommendation and I'll be voting against it. And if there's a majority that votes against it, I'll be looking for the officer recommendation. I think it's pretty clear from the expert evidence provided by Manager Risby that that the street doesn't meet standards for intervention. We've already had this come to council. We've already had an officer consultation process. I mean, we have to be conscious of, consultation is not without cost. It involves a significant amount of time of resourcing, staff resourcing, that's cost. That's time diverted of Manager Risby and his time from other priorities in our city and dealing with other issues and creating further backlogs. So there is a cost associated with it. In my view, the cost doesn't outweigh the benefit because I can't see any way forward even with that further consultation. So just foreshadowing that I will be voting against this. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other speakers? Councillor Champion?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, this is news to me now. I'm with Councillor Rick on this. He's pretty much said exactly what I think. Agree totally. We've already been through this consultation. There has been a lot for the community to have conversations with, and it is admirable that Councillor McKern does want to hear and listen to all her community. It is just unfortunate, as in my community, there is going to be disappointment. There are people who will agree with this, there are people who like this, and then there are those residents who don't. I do also agree with Councillor Melican. It is up to other people to really think about which route they're taking and which type of road they're driving on, and choose something that's actually safe for everybody. Hence, Google Maps sort of takes us through main roads rather than the narrow, quiet streets of the residents. So I'm with Councillor Rick on this. Unfortunately, for this particular item, item 5.2 in the Wallace Street residents, I will not be supporting this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers to the item? Okay, right of reply, Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I've heard what my fellow councillors have had to say, I must say that I do disagree with them. They need to be bearing in mind that this is a major activity zone that this small residential street is located in. Not only do I speak to the location of nearby shops and schools and a scout hall, but it's also shown up on Google Maps as the shortcut taking residents away from the lights and around from Livingston to Upper Heidelberg Road. Now, I believe the officers have tried to approach Google about this issue, and Google have not responded. So we have a situation, as Councillor Melican has alluded to, Mr Mayor, of risk and safety coming to the forefront of our attention here. And God forbid, should a child be hurt, injured, or any other local person hurt or injured using that street, in the face of the work we've attempted to do with the strong support of the residents to make Wallace Street a safer place for youth and the community as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion lost. With that, we now move back to the recommendation as in the papers. And we have a mover, Councillor Garotti. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Champion. As mover, do you wish to speak? Seconder? No? Any other councillor? I now then put the motion as in the papers. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 5.3, 11 Livingston Street, Ivanhoe, request to change zebra crossing to pedestrian operated signals. There is one speaker on the item tonight, Kevin Bagini. Will address council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Kevin, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. This is a good matter to come up tonight. I'm glad that it's been tabled here in council tonight. I'm happy to speak on it and I'm happy to support it. 25 years we've lived in Ivanhoe, and I find that this section of road is quite beguiling to drive through when you're coming from the direction of Northcote. I can see my way around anywhere in the area when I'm driving quite clearly, but for some reason the fall of light, like natural light or artificial light, the alignment of the trees the light poles, the power poles, the sign poles. It's very hard to see clearly on the footpath whether there is someone approaching that crossing and is about to walk onto that crossing. And I find that I'm very careful when I drive through that area. And even if it's only at 40 kilometres an hour, I have to be careful there. I'm firmly in favour of this recommendation to go through. I find that things like this sometimes, and there's an expression of concern that's stated in council, and then sometimes that doesn't go very far after that. However, I'm buoyed by the fact that council is going to refer this to some other relevant authorities, one of which will be our state member, who has spent some considerable time in state government. He's held in high regard by his party and the government, which looks after these matters. He's also had quite a bit of experience here in this council as a councillor. So I'm very happy that he's going to be looking after this for us. And the sooner this is done, the better. It'll be a good outcome for everybody. Safety is the issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now, councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. I will call for a mover of this motion. Councillor McKern. And seconder, Councillor Melican. As mover, Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the Speaker, Mr. Bagini, for his comments. I know he's been a strong advocate for safer crossing in this section of Livingston Street. I've seen your video clip, Mr. Bagini, and it certainly goes a long way to demonstrate some of the dangers of pedestrians trying to cross here and motorists not always giving due regard or due priority to pedestrians. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that I too support the recommendation before us this evening. I think this is an important crossing to be advocating for safer pedestrian crossing. This section of Ivanhoe, as I mentioned in the previous item, is becoming busier. It's part of an activity centre, once called a major activity centre, and with more densification of the area, we will be seeing more traffic and need to be giving priority to pedestrian safety. So I fully support tonight's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, I will make a few comments. It's not a particularly pedestrian-friendly area, and if Kevin thinks it's bad to drive your car through there, you'll try riding your bike through there. It's many competing entrances, and the exit into the car park for Coles is quite problematic, and you only got to look at the amount of damage that's been done to the poles and infrastructure down there to realise that cars often leave the road and run into posts and things. I was asked to go down there by a resident to just experience what it's like to be a pedestrian in that area, and I sat there for about 10 minutes, and it was not particularly appealing to be a pedestrian. You felt quite unwelcome in the area, and as Councillor McKern said, these areas are becoming more densely populated, and we need to build our cities for people, not build our cities for cars. So I'll support this recommendation tonight. I hope it is a road controlled by the state, so they'll need to approve and fund any changes, but I will support this tonight because I think it is an important access point into the Ivanhoe Activity Centre, and it needs to be made more safer but more inviting, so people will actually enjoy walking to their activity centres, and not everyone will be compelled to drive because it's the only safe way to access the shopping strip. So I'll support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers on the item? Mover, would you like to write a reply? No. With that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. As the meeting has been going for 2 hours, I'm going to call for a 5-minute break. If councillors could be back at 7:05. Thank you. All right. I'd just like to thank those at home for being patient with us tonight. We have a few more agenda items to go through. Now, with that, we restart the meeting at 10:10. 9:10. Next agenda item is 5.4, 72 Turnham Avenue, Rosanna, subdivision of council land P631-2022. There are two speakers on this item. Alicia Curry will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. Alicia, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
So thank you. This evening, so I could be speaking about a number of things. I could be speaking about the petition for 5,600. I could be speaking about the objections that have been placed to the previous planning application. But tonight I'm actually going to speak on process. So the subdivision application in the previous sale of land to Woolworths, and it's in the document attachment 1 on item 5.4 that came up in April 2021. They've got the order of how things happened in the first selling. So the rezoning, the undertaking of expressions of interest, the subdivision, then the public notice of council's intention to sell. And in this application, we're seeing the subdivision very late in the process. You've already sold the land, you've already agreed the planning permit, you've already sourced 1.5 million from state government even before the planning permit was approved. So there's no doubt that this approval is going through. There was just nothing that we could do as either the campaign called Raw. There was absolutely nothing that we could say to change your mind. And that shows that you didn't have an open mind to the process. You can't come to the council and decide everything before this one and then decide that this is something that you can decide out of the blue with an independent mind. I think it shows bias. I'm not surprised. And the outcome, as always, goes against every policy that council has to support the environment. There's 51 trees that are going missing in action, no protection for the PUZ land. It's still public use zoned land, and now you're applying the subdivision after all those previous processes have come. And so I've still got 10 seconds left. So I just want to draw your attention to the document that proves that. So this document I sourced from Spear, which was, and would you mind if I had another 20 seconds? Thank you. So this document is intended use two-lot subdivision to enable a portion of the subject site to be transferred and consolidated with the adjoining land, as per existing development permit. Now that existing development permit came 5 months after this document was submitted to Land Victoria, an existing permit. So there's no way that we can do anything to fight that. It's biased, but I've said my piece about 12, 13 times. We can do no more. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Bugini will address council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Kevin, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. This application for development is different to a lot of developments that I've seen in Banyule. It's not an isolated development. It will go and be built on its own. It is part of a greater plan, and that is the whole area around Rosanna Station. Now, Rosanna is quite a nice suburb. If I had to move out of where I am, I would probably pick Rosanna if they would have me. But aside from all that, there's a bit of change going on there, and a lot of people are unacceptable about change. They just think it's totally unacceptable to them. They don't want it, and they oppose it just for the fact that it's going to be changed how they live. I think a lot of people, if I recall, weren't that happy about the railway station changes, the way that panned out. And I think you can recall in the past there was a bit of talk about it, but people generally come to accept it and see that it wasn't such a bad design after all. Same as it goes for a lot of high rises and shops that are put in. People accept it and they find that their fears weren't so bad really. There was one woman who came up to me in the town planning and she said that she was horrified that there was a block of apartments going up in her street. But now, 10 years later, she was living in an apartment herself and she was more than happy to do so. So that people do get to experience change in their communities. And if the good people who do the design for these developments do it right, then in the long run it will be right for the people who initially oppose it. And that's my feeling about it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now, councillors, there is an officer recommendation. Firstly, are there any questions for the speakers tonight? No. Councillors, there's an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a councillor to move this motion. Councillor Melican, do I have a seconder? Councillor Garotti. As mover, Councillor Melican, would you like to speak to the item first?
I think you misread the hands there, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. I just note in the report that the three referral authorities, Jemina, Melbourne Water and Yarra Valley Water, all consented to this subdivision. I do understand the concerns raised, and as the other speaker said, change is not easy. But the benefits of this process, when you look at what this will provide for Rosanna, the uplift in the precinct, the activation of the shopping strip, the positive impact on traffic, and I know traffic is something that is often raised that this proposal will increase traffic congestion. Well, you only got to look at the congestion down Cape Street into Burgundy Street and the enormous amount of traffic that is very congested there. This will provide the opportunity for people to walk to their local shopping centre, buy what they want to buy at a good price and go and walk home. And also, so the benefits of being able to shop locally are enormous. Property values will increase in Rosanna because of this change. The streetscape will be redesigned. The council has every intention to ensure that as many trees as possible are planted in the streetscape, trees that will grow to a height that will add to a wildlife corridor going down Terman Avenue. And they will be trees appropriate for the area that will last a long time and add significantly to the streetscape. And as well as that, this will facilitate a much bigger library than council would afford to build in a much shorter time frame, which will add more activity into the centre, which means people will be able to, the infant welfare centre will be moved in there. This will become a real children's hub and a community hub, which will benefit the entire shopping centre while providing facilities locally for local people. So I'll support this tonight. I think it's a great outcome. Understand the issue about selling council land is never popular, but the benefits of this proposal are so significant that I think selling a proportion of council land to gain the benefits that this project will deliver is well worth it. So I'll support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? No. With that, I would like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 6.1, Community Infrastructure Plan. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, you've got a question? Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a question, just regarding in the background, I couldn't see it covered, but my understanding that one of the drivers of this report was a notice of motion that was raised probably around 2 years ago by Councillor Neely at the time, calling for a report and just seeking comment from Officer's CEO that indeed that is a driver of this report. Thank you.
Could the Director speak to that?
Yes, Councillor, it is, and thank you. That probably is an oversight on our behalf to reference that in the report. So the notice of motion catalysed two really important things. One was the infrastructure framework, which Council has already adopted, which provided the framework for people, fit for people, place and purpose, and then flowing from that, the infrastructure plan, which you've got in front of you tonight as a draft.
Are there any further questions you'd like to ask? No. With that, councillors, there's an officer recommendation. I'll now call for this motion to be put by Councillor Neely. Is there a seconder? Councillor Champion? Councillor Neely, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Grotti, for asking that question. Councillor Champion and I were talking about, meeting the needs of the community through important community spaces and seeking data and seeking more information about where those services are spread throughout the municipality and having a proactive approach to meeting the future needs of the community. So the plan is about serving the community and about actively making sure that everything is fit for, as the report states, people, purpose and place, and the 20-minute neighbourhoods is also a consideration. And, residents have said to me, does that mean we're going to have everything within 20 minutes? And it's not about that. It's about having, an acceptable amount of infrastructure and resourcing to all areas of the municipality to make sure that people are, not isolated in any way. So using data, to identify and, the situation of community buildings, upgrading things like upgrading the childcare areas, reviewing licence agreements and working in partnerships with others. So working in partnerships to develop, my big thing is multi-purpose meeting spaces and seeing these areas with maximum users, with maximum opportunities, with a variety of services on offer. And not only a variety of services, I'd like to see that it was diverse, not only in provision, but diverse in attendance. So having diversity, from young to old, accessing services throughout the municipality. So that's why I support this strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Just very briefly, if we could just ask as many members of our communities as possible to please contribute to this. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. The other reports we've had this evening have been contributed to significantly by many of our residents using their expertise as well as their passion. So we'd love to hear something similar for this between the 6th of December and the 12th of February 2023. Love to hear your thoughts. Councillor Liz Neely and I are on the same page with this. We do believe that if there are any places that our communities can meet safely, we'd love to know, we'd love to hear them. Obviously, one that comes to my mind, and certainly Councillor Liz's mind, is the Monty Hub. It is created by the community for the community, so we're looking for more. So we'd love to hear your feedback, please. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Grotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I remember now what I wanted to say. So this plan, very pleased with the plan and full credit to the officers involved in developing it. Just with regard to the northwestern component of the plan and the focus around the NJ Talfa Reserve, that's been identified in the plan as an area where considerable investment's required, particularly in terms of the maternal, child and health facilities there. And I think, again, tonight, that's a very good linkage to a notice of motion that I've raising around NJ Telfer Reserve. The power supply is inadequate there now, according to officers, to do anything other than business as usual. So clearly, as we're looking at this plan, we need to get the infrastructure in place in different areas as well to facilitate those plans. So very interested in this and then how it ties into other notices of motion. I just wanted to congratulate Councillor Neely and Councillor Champion. They really pushed for this strategy. It wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for their notice of motion and their leadership and advocacy and getting it on the agenda of council and pushing it forward. So that's a credit to your work, Liz, and to your work, Alison. So well done and thank you for that. And then I suppose just the final observation, though, is that it's taken 2 years from notice of motion to plan, and plan doesn't mean anything delivered on the ground. And so I suppose when I look at this, it doesn't surprise me then that it takes 20 years plus to get a new submarine delivered in this country. Things seem to be taking a lot more time here, though, than what they used to previously. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor McKern.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I acknowledge everything the previous councillors have said about this draft report. Certainly place-based planning and the 20-minute neighbourhood is becoming increasingly important as our population grows. And as you know, following the state government planning policy, for Melbourne, we are looking at potentially doubling our population, and that's what we need to be planning for. This draft strategy will go out to our community to think of ideas as to how we can better use existing buildings. This is a really great opportunity. And just to give you an example, existing council buildings, sports pavilions are a good one in question, Mr Mayor, where they're often used after hours, after 3:30 p.m. and on the weekends. So what are they doing during the day? Sitting idle? Could they be used for play groups, parent groups, cafes, social enterprise projects? This is the sort of thing we're thinking about. How can we multi-use spaces, not necessarily remove one use to accommodate another, but complement uses in terms of timing schedules? And it doesn't just relate to council buildings, it relates to all sorts of community buildings. I just want to add, church buildings are a good one in question. School buildings are another. They're used during the day. What about after hours use? So it's an opportunity for residents to get creative hats on and be contributing ideas. If you can think of particular buildings that could be multi-used, if you can think of multi-use purpose that might fit into a community building, this is the time we want to hear. I believe, Mr Mayor, we have a 9-week consultation period, so it's an important time to have your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. And with that, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 8.1, instrument of delegation from Council to the Chief Executive Officer. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. Can I please have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Garotti, seconded Councillor Neely. Councillor Garotti, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will, and thank you to our officer Linda Chappell and coordinator Kirsten Forte just for their work on this. So well done and thank you. Just a few changes are that we've clarified, or we'll be clarifying in the delegations, that the internal auditor appointment has to come to council. I note that that happened anyway, so thank you, Director Giulio, for that, but having it in the delegations is good practice. I think it clarifies as well the delegation now around the $1 million for the CEO, so that's within the total budget for the year, capital and operating. So that's a wide remit, and that's appropriate for the CEO, consistent with what we see in other councils. But at least that's clearly articulated now in the delegation, which I think is important. And then the third point too is just clarifying the sub-delegation to staff. So that has never previously been clearly defined or approved by the council. But what that now means is that it's official that the chief executive can sub-delegate below the 1 million to her staff. And so I think this just really tightens things up from a governance perspective. And I thank you, Kirsten and her team again for their work on this. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak? No? Any other councillor? No? So I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item 8.2, instrument delegation from council to members of council staff. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Melican. Is there a seconder? Councillor Garotti. As mover, would you like to speak? Seconder, would you like to speak? No? Any other councillor? No? With that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item 8.3, instrument of appointment to authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer's recommendation in the agenda papers. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Neely. Councillor Garotti, seconded. Councillor Neely, would you like to speak to the item? Seconder, would you like to speak? No. Any other councillor? No. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item 8.4, instrument of sub-delegation and appointment and authorisation, Environment Protection Act 2017. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there is an officer's recommendation in the agenda papers. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Melican, seconder. Councillor Mitsonikos. Would the mover like to speak to the item? Seconder? No. Any other councillor? No. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to agenda item 8.5, awarded contract number 1168 2022, provision of a smart access control and security solution, including managed services. Now there are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the papers. Can I please have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Garotti. Seconder, Councillor Melican. Would you like to speak to the motion as mover?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think it's just important every now and then that we do talk to these items, just so that the community understands or appreciates that we do review them. And there's obviously confidential attachments as well to them that has the pricing and the scoring that we see and that we interrogate. One of the questions that we raised about this particular tender was the fact that there were quite a number shortlisted, but only 2 ultimately put in a tender. So we sought some feedback from officers on that. We were comfortable with that feedback and comfortable with the process. And certainly there are some learnings there as well for officers for the future. But I think it's just important to give that flavour to the community that we are having these conversations, so we just don't go and tick the box. We do review the tenders that come up to us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item? Any other councillor? No. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 8.6, record of councillor meetings. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer recommendation in the papers. Can I please have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Neely, seconder. Councillor Mitsonikos. Would the mover like to speak to the item? Seconder? Any other councillor? No. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Now, on item 8.7, award of contract number 1222, 2022, implementation of Microsoft Dynamics 365 CRM and managed services. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the agenda papers. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Melican, seconder. Councillor Garotti. Mover would like to speak to the item?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the officers' hard work. It is a significant contract to really improve our ability to provide services to not only our staff but also to residents but also to councillors. So happy to support this tonight and I'd like to thank the team for their efforts in getting this to this stage.
And seconder? Any other councillor? No? With that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 10, notice of motions. There are 4 notice of motions that have been raised by councillors, 1 submitted by Councillor McKern and 3 submitted by Councillor Garotti. Item 10.1, International Women's Day event 2023. Can I please have a councillor move that motion? Councillor McKern, is there a seconder? Councillor Neely, would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to speak to this notice of motion. Council has a role to play in advocating, celebrating and being leaders in the space of empowering women and celebrating equality. It's built into our inclusivity statement and our policies. Supporting International Women's Day on the 8th of March gives us an opportunity to do just that. And this is why Banyule Council is proposing to host an event next year to celebrate International Women's Day. It should be observed, Mr Mayor, that this is the first time Council has 4 female councillors and a female CEO. It's incumbent upon us, I believe, to reach out and promote equality for all women. But it's not only Banyule Council. The recognition and celebrating of International Women's Day is a popular local government activity in Melbourne. So, should the motion for a council report to be presented to Council in February be adopted tonight, I would imagine that Council would be looking to apply the International Women's Day 2023 campaign theme, which is #EmbraceEquity, to promote human rights for women. Everyone should be entitled to human rights, but across the globe, many women and girls are discriminated against because of gender inequality. International Women's Day has been observed since the early 1900s, so it's actually one of the most recognised, internationally celebrated events on the planet. And that was a time, the early 1900s, when mass world turbulence was experienced on account of world expansion and industrialisation, and we saw the start of the women's rights movement. As I mentioned, it's an important event on the world calendar, and it's an appropriate event for council involvement, so I hope we get councillor support for it for next year.
Thank you, councillor. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Don't want to repeat too much of what Councillor McKern has said, other than that Council has a role in this space to advocate and demonstrate leadership. And as Councillor McKern mentioned, you know, there are 4 women on Council. It's the first time for Banyule. In future, I'd like to think that we won't have to say that anymore. It'll just be as normal and things will ebb and flow. And even if there is 8 women on Council and 1 man, or the opposite, that it's no longer an issue of contention. And it doesn't have to be 4.5 and 4.5. It just has to be a space where there's opportunities for people and opportunities to raise awareness about issues like violence, abuse, equality in general, calling out those inequalities and providing positive environments for women in their workspaces, making changes, improving education, and having accessibility to education for everybody. So it's for women to get involved in, but also men to support these human rights, to do what is right for everybody. And participating, it is an honour to participate as a councillor in, the democratic process and to represent people and, and ensuring that if I could have a say to ensure that others have the opportunity, I will. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the agenda item? Councillor Mitsonikos.
Look, I'll just speak very briefly because obviously a lot's already been said. It's a great opportunity to celebrate women and all they've achieved. We definitely have some amazing women out there, and women who are actually doing things for good, not actually just necessarily for financial gain as well. They're actually doing things to help other women or other people, just anybody in need. So, I think it's definitely a great opportunity to have an International Women's Day event. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a slight variation on a theme. So for those of you who've participated in the past in our International Women's Day events, known as the Women in Business Lunch, this is just an alternative. The other thing I did want to say that is really significant, you don't have to be a woman to celebrate this day. You can be any gender. So any gender is welcome at this event. This is in this particular activity that is being created is just a little bit different from those in the past. And we're excited. We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to hearing the outcome of this and reading the report coming out in February next year. But we're certainly looking forward, Council's looking forward to this particular event. So, as I've said, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it's just a day to acknowledge and celebrate. So we'll look forward to seeing the outcome in February. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other councillor? Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, I think Councillor Champion opened that up to further comments from other councillors, but I understand that our 4 women councillors have collaborated together to bring this notice of motion about, and I think that's a tribute to the 4 of you. Well done and congratulations, and that's quite inspiring that you got together to do that. And I'm looking forward to the report, and if the event happens, can't presuppose, but looking forward to being invited and to participating. So thank you.
Any other councillor now that's been opened up? No? I think it's a really good idea. There's never enough celebration of women and their contribution to our community, and it's only now that they're starting to be given they're coming up and taking the leadership roles, and I welcome that, and the community as well. I look forward to celebrating with you if we do get this report come forward. With that, I would now like to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Notice of motion 10.2, NJ Telfer Reserve long-term electricity power requirements for solar and building. Can I please have a councillor move a motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Happy to move, and this is one of 3 notices of motion that I'll be moving tonight. So it is a lot in that sense, but it's the halfway point now of our term on council, and just doing a bit of housekeeping around getting some reports scheduled of what I think is important for the community in my area. So with regard to NJ Telfer Reserve, I know that our CEO and our director, they're doing quite a lot of work around maternal, child and health and the kindergartens and the requirements now that have come upon from state in terms of expansion of those services. So there is going to be a growing need there on that site. At the same time as well, the Bandura Scouts, they've been successful with a number of grants for solar panels and batteries, which they're constrained with doing anything with at the moment. So the report will just be useful in terms of understanding, well, what can be done there longer term for all users, what will be the cost, and what do officers think about things. So hopefully that's a worthwhile report, but I certainly think it'll be appreciated by a number of stakeholders that use NJ Telfer Reserve and the associated community. Thank you, Mayor.
Look, thank you, Councillor. We didn't have a mover. We had a mover but not a seconder, but I think you've spoken to the item out of order. But do we have a seconder? Councillor Demilaros? My apologies. Demirelis. Would you like to speak as seconder? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Garotti for raising this nom for NJ Telfer Reserve. I did raise a question during the week, and that is what the prioritisation plan for council facilities is in relation to solar power requirements to its buildings. And I just thought the public, Mr Mayor, would be interested to know that nearly all council-operated buildings already have solar installed, and there's one more year to run on our solar on leased facilities program. So it would appear that it could be timely for NJ Telfer to be reviewed and a report come to council, although it has been noted by the officers that NJ Telfer Reserve does have complex issues that need to be addressed, and that's one of the reasons why it has been a little bit tardy for consideration. So we'll be interested in that report coming back to council, Mr Mayor.
Great. Now, any other councillors like to speak? No? Okay. I now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item 10.3, supply chain integrity motion. Can I please have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Garotti, and seconded Councillor Neely. Councillor Garotti, would you now like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And again, this one has been on my radar for quite some time, and certainly have flagged it with the councillor group and with our chief executive, and just, I suppose, finding the right time to raise it. CE indicated that around now is sort of appropriate, given that good progress has been made on the business plan for financial year 2022-23. But really the intent here, and I think this would position us as one of the leaders in local government, is just to get some assurance on the integrity of supply chain and to make sure that suppliers that we engage are basically doing the right thing, that they're not, contributing to modern slavery, that they're upholding appropriate standards that we would expect here in this country. And that extends from everything that we procure right down to solar panels. And we're in the process of a major rollout of solar panels across the city, and just having assurance, for example, with that program and where those solar panels are manufactured, and to make sure that there's integrity in where they've been sourced from. So I think that this is good practice for the council. It's a requirement now of all state and federal government agencies to do it. It's a requirement of every business in this country that has more than 100 million turnover. So it's a surprise that local government was carved out of that by the feds. But I think that the requirement's certainly going to be there at some point in the future. So let's just get ourselves ready. Let's do the due diligence and let's hopefully go back to our community with confidence that we can say, yeah, we're doing the right thing, we're procuring well, we're helping to build secure supply chains globally. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is good practice put forward by Councillor Garotti, and it's something that should be done sector-wide. And I look forward to the report. Thank you.
Any other councillor? No? I'll now then put that motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to the last notice of motion, 10.4, Banyule Blitz. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Garotti, a seconder. Councillor Champion, would the mover like to speak to the item now?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So just the context behind this notice of motion is just looking at our capital budget and the cost pressures that we're seeing around our major pavilions and buildings, and also reviewing the feedback that we received through the community vision process and the 10-year asset plan, where the community said in terms of priority, Banyule should look to shift away from major buildings and pavilions, but potentially with its capital works program, look to get back to basics a little bit with a greater focus on local neighbourhood areas and making sure that the local infrastructure not only looks well, but functions well. And I think that that dovetails well given the financial challenges that we're going to have in the next couple of years with the cost of that major infrastructure and the rebalancing that we're looking to do in our capital works budget. So the question that I've sort of been having with the CEO is, well, look, is there an opportunity to rebalance a little bit and to put forward more capital funds back into local community areas in terms of that day-to-day infrastructure that we use? Roads, footpaths. We know with the the recent heavy sun and then rain that we've seen a lot of grass jump up and a lot of feedback received about the tidiness of our local reserves and parks. So the idea behind this is to rebalance a bit of our council investment into those things right across the city, which will hopefully deliver a bit of an amenity back to the community. The Mayor certainly gave me a call from America to discuss this, and the Mayor and I are going to go and have a bit of a tour of Bundoora and surrounds and have a bit of a look at things on the ground. But I'm certainly looking forward, if adopted, to seeing this report come back from officers. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Thanks, Mayor. Just very briefly, this is a really good name for a song, isn't it? Thank you to certainly my community, Sherborne community. Every now and then I do get an email or a text message or a phone call just asking for some of this household housekeeping, as we're calling it, this housekeeping to be done. Pass on the message to our officers, and often they do straight away go and get it done. Mainly potholes. But I've certainly had some resurfacing in Sherborne done lately, resurfacing of roads, graffiti removal, pothole improvements, etc. And I obviously want to thank the officers for their support with that as well. It's done usually very quickly in Sherborne. So this isn't a bad idea. This is actually a really good idea. There's no point in creating beautiful buildings and big buildings if we have dangerous footpaths and other little areas that are just unsightly. So this is a notice of motion that I'm certainly going to be supporting this evening. Thanks, Councillor.
Do we have any other speakers on this item? No? Well, with that, I'll now put the motion. All in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to general business. Deputy Mayor Councillor Alida McKern, would you like to speak to your item?
That confounded button. The first that I'd like to raise is that I was really delighted to help BANSIC, which stands for Banyule Support and Information Centre, celebrate their 50th birthday on Saturday. For the past 50 years, BANSIC has been providing emergency food assistance to residents of southern Banyule who are struggling with food security. Clients are provided with a range of groceries such as fresh produce, eggs, meat, pantry items and bread, all free of charge. The centre is open on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays and is located at Shop 48 in the Bell Street Mall. What's really incredible about BANSIC is that it has been running very successfully for 50 years. As one of the key speakers mentioned during speeches at the birthday party, this is quite unusual for not-for-profits that can claim 50 years of continuous community service, which just goes to show how much needed the service is and how well patronised and supported it's been. And I've got to give a shout out to the Rosanna Country Women's Association, Mr Mayor. I think they put on one of the best spreads I've ever seen at a local event. So Rosanna Country Women's Association, you absolutely excelled yourself. So that was a terrific event to be part of. I also want to mention that in late November, Ivanhoe Tennis Club and Ivanhoe Bowls got together to celebrate joint 110th birthday celebrations. I mean, isn't that an incredible achievement? Good to see that those clubs are getting on so well too, that they would run a joint birthday celebration. Over 180 people attended with free bowls and tennis on offer. And Ivanhoe Tennis Club was proud to announce an award from Tennis Victoria, and Ivanhoe Bowls scored a bit of a jackpot. It announced a grant from the state government to upgrade their change rooms. So that was another terrific celebration to be part of. Not sure that there were any other councillors there. Were you there at that one, Tom? No. And also just wanted to mention the Banyule Urban Food Strategy. Hopefully our community is aware that consultation is now underway. I want to mention that the consultation being done for this strategy has been outstanding. All credit to community services. We have a terrific, I might just say, Mr Mayor, that I believe the speaking time is 3 minutes per item. So I think I'm entitled to a bit more time to finish,
if you'd like to finish
this third item. The Community Reference Group, which can, according to the terms of reference, have 14 community participants. At last count, we had 11 community members on that group. It's an outstanding group with representatives from all over the municipality and covering all sectors of food. Pop-up consultations, co-design workshops, surveys on our digital platform, and a wonderful innovation called Kitchen Table Talks, where the community can get together in small groups, they're community-led, and discuss their ideas and concerns about food in Banyule. I'll give a plug, Mr Mayor, to a kitchen table talk that I'm running at Vinor Central to support local traders next Tuesday, the 13th of December. Bookings are required if anyone from the community would like to come. And if you are interested in attending, just check out my Facebook page or email me for the details. That's all from me, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We now move on to Councillor Metsanikos. Have you got one or two, or how many have you got?
I've got lots.
Let's start.
Oh, sorry. So for the months of October and November, I've been busy collecting donated goods from the community and also handbags and backpacks for Share the Dignity. On Sunday the 27th, I had a sorting day at my house, and the picture up there is actually with Donna, who's the team leader of Victoria, in her garage, which actually looks way fuller than my house did. She has a lot of bags there. But yeah, so I had a sorting day at my house, and I wanted to thank some fabulous local women for coming to help to put together all the bags. We did have so many goods donated, my house was overrun. But special thanks go to Vanessa, Bryony, Kate, Donna, Teeny and baby Lucky, who my daughter was besotted with. In fact, I think most of the women were a bit clucky with a baby in the room. We managed to create 50 adult bags, 22 teen bags and 12 mums and bubs bags. And I've still got probably about 6 to 10 left to actually drop off. So Share the Dignity actually partners with 400 Victorian charities, including Big Group Hug, Hayden's, Helping Hands, Angels 3081, Diamond Valley Community Support and Food Share. They're just some of the ones you may have heard of locally. They did have requests this year for 20,000 bags, and unfortunately they only received 11,000, which is very low numbers, but it could be due to COVID, financial impacts, I guess, on people being able to afford to actually create a bag, like previous years. But it's a fantastic charity, and all these bags are then donated to women in need for Christmas who are experiencing homelessness or affected by domestic violence. There's also the new mums bag is given to mums who might have had to flee and have nothing for their babies. And now there's the teens bag, which is also means that teens have a gift to open at Christmas. So I just wanted to put out a massive thank you to the community who helped me with this bag drive, because there was a lot of people involved. It wasn't just me. There was a lot of people who donated things and came and helped to put everything together. And also to my family who had to live amongst bags absolutely everywhere for probably a month. So they're quite happy they've now been donated to women. And on Thursday, I actually attended the grand final of the Northern Business Achievement Awards, like a few other councillors. And we got some great tips from Victor Purton, who's from the Business Centre for Optimism. Some exciting news for Banyule, that a Viewbank resident, who we actually worked out is a school dad as well, Chris Olifiso, won the Best Startup Business Award for his product, Upsies. And it was actually born from a need to protect the safety and well-being of new mums after his wife, Grace, who was recovering from a caesarean, and she found it nearly impossible to lift her baby from the cot. So Chris created a solution, which is a multi-purpose, multifunctional design that helped women recovering from birth and maybe even parents who've got bad backs to safely get their babies in and out of their cot. Chris mentioned that he's received a lot of support and guidance from Banyule City Council, which is fantastic to hear, and we wish him all the best with his business, Upsies. And the Greenery was also a winner on the day, so that's 2 great results for Banyule business. And then our last one is a Christmas Day event, which this one's, this came from a nomination, I guess, that I put through, which Christmas can obviously be a very lonely day for some people who have no friends or family to spend it with. Brother Harry from Exodus Community in Heidelberg West is hosting a luncheon for those who are alone on Christmas Day. So we are pleased that we could provide grants to groups such as Exodus to help make Christmas Day not so isolating for those who are alone on Christmas Day. And I just it's on the screen at the moment, but if you know that you're going to be alone this Christmas Day, please go to our webpage or see it on the screen and get in contact with Brother Harry so you can come along and enjoy Christmas Day with others who are in a similar situation. I will be there with my family, volunteering on the day and spreading some good cheer, and I will, of course, be wearing a Christmas hat. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other councillors like to raise? No? Okay. With that, we now move on to public questions. We have received 2 public questions this evening. They will be included in the minutes of this meeting. The minutes will be available on the website later this week. Director of Corporate Services, Mark Giglio, will read out the questions and the relevant directors will answer.
Thank you, Mayor. First question is by Andrew Permawanita from Heidelberg, and the question reads, in an occasion of permanent closure of Gloucester Drive at Bristol Avenue, how can we clearly inform drivers who still are not aware of the closure? More prominent signs? Google Map update? This question is referred to the Director of City Development for response.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. If a road is permanently closed, Council updates road data on our mapping system, which is then made available to any mapping company such as Google. Additional signage can also be considered, such as no-through road signs, depending on the situation.
Second question is from Wendy Palliser from Heidelberg Heights. The question reads, how does Banyule City Council propose to protect the habitat of abundant bird life that frequent the tall ribbon gum tree recently set on fire and the other large trees along the nature strip of James Park Recreational Reserve when the master plan has approved a footpath that would be in 5 metres of the tree's drip line would affect the tree's life? And I'll refer that question to the Director of Assets and City Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there's really two responses to that question. The first is in relation to the suspected burning of the tree. We did do an inspection out there last week and again today, and has determined that the suspected black burnt part of the tree is likely to be caused by a stress response, and it's actually tree sap, so it's very unlikely that it's been burnt. We did a structural assessment today, and the tree's in fair to poor health and will undergo some dead wooding to remove the dead parts of the tree. The second part of the question relates to the master plan, and as that master plan progresses, there will be a tree impact assessment conducted during the detailed design phase of that process, and particularly for the footpath that's been identified in that location. This assessment will make some recommendations that may include altering the path alignment slightly to have less impact on the tree, or using a porous material for that section of the path that again will minimise the impact to the tree. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to closure of meeting. Number 1, in accordance with Section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will now be closed to members of the public for the consideration of one confidential matter. Can I please have a councillor move and second for the councillor to close the meeting to members of the public prior to considering confidential items? Councillor Neely moved and Councillor Mitsonikos second. Then we put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion carried.
Happy Christmas to you.
The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday the 6th of February 2023. I now close the open council meeting at 10:08, and councillors will shortly move into the confidential council meeting. Thank you for your attendance at the meeting, for those that were present in the gallery and watching via the live stream. This is the final council meeting of 2023, and I wish all staff, councillors and the Banyule community a safe and healthy festive season, and look forward to the new year.